Welcome to Ask Earl Anything. This is the show where your questions make the show. Without your questions, we do not have a show. This is for March 2023. This month is, what do they call it? Metal March. Cleaning my glasses already. Can't deal with the glare in my face from the lights. So this month, March, in the drum community on YouTube is Metal March. Now, with that being said, my plan is to do a few metal tunes this month. I'm not the metal drummer necessarily, but I've played all kinds of music, and I've played some pretty heavy music. I was actually on a Screamo album once. I would not recommend me for a Screamo album, and if I ever had that opportunity again to engineer a Screamo band, which I really don't want to engineer a Screamo band anymore, but back then I did engineer a Screamo band. The drummer quit. I would have hired some young kid who could play that stuff. That's where I'm at in my stage of life now. It's like there's things I do well, and there's things I don't do well, and then there's things I can do. Heavy metal is something I can do. Now, it doesn't take much for me to play metal because it's driving, it's powerful, it's forceful. And today with simplified bass drum in my brain, that's how I play bass drum a lot now, is 1 in 3 more than playing lots of notes or throwing a couple extra notes in once in a while, keeping the 1 in 3 locked up. I listen to a lot of the metal from the 80s, the hair band metal, and I'll start with that because I'm not going to get anywhere near a genre that is so heavy and so out there like death metal or something else. It's just not going to be me. You're not going to find me anywhere near 9 Inch Nails and beyond. There are bands that I play, and there's bands I probably would never try to play because of the technique involved to do it. There's a drummer, 11 Drums, Toby. Toby is playing that world. He's doing a lot of the heavier tunes, newer bands from this era, double bass. That's his thing. And there are guys that do that very well. There's guys that do the hairband metal and all the metal in between, like Trey B, that do it very well. So when I say I'm going to do some metal covers, I'm going to try a Def Leppard. I've got an Ozzy and a Def Leppard in the can. I'm looking at a Warrant for my friend Mike Fasano, who did ask a question this month, even though I haven't got the video question I asked him he was going to give me. I do have his question from the last Ask Earl Anything. He was Warrant's 7th and 9th drummer, as he likes to say. So I'm planning on doing a Warrant song. And the 4th one is up for grabs. It's looking like it's probably going to be Twisted Sister. I don't know Dee Snider, but I know his brother. So that's my connection to Dee Snider, is his brother Frank Schneider, who I've done work for and work with and in the cable industry. So I'm planning on doing a Twisted Sister, a Warrant. I've got a Def Leppard in the can, and I've got a Ozzy in the can. And one of these could have came out before this show comes out. So it's Metal March. I'm going to plan on putting them out on Monday, so I can tell you one of them did come out before the show. I just don't know if it's going to be Def Leppard, which somebody asked me to play a year and a half ago, and I've been sitting on it for a long time. And then I had this request to do an Ozzy song from my friend Bruce Holiday. Happy birthday, Bruce, in New Jersey. So he asked me to do some Ozzy. I did Black Sabbath last summer for him, and this one, the Ozzy tune, is for him. So we will see how your reaction is to me playing some metal. I'm going to try to put them out on Mondays. I'm calling them Metal Mondays for me. So I'm not going to hashtag Metal Mondays, but it's going to be hashtag Metal March 24 for Kelly Cusimano, KM Ken Drum, and for Rich Raw Dog, who I think are the two guys really heading it up. I'm sure there's a lot of other guys doing it. But remember, I'm not Trey B. Trey B's a friend. Rock on, Trey. I wish I had the pyrotechnics and all the stuff that it takes to really be that genre. I'm more of a pocket drummer, as you know. That's why we just came out of February. February for me for the last 3 or 4 years has been Black History Month, and I've been playing R&B, soul, funk, disco, gospel classics for the whole month. and that's what I did this month. The whole month of March was everything funk, gospel, soul, R&B, Motown stacks. I did a little bit of each. Some Aretha in there, some disco in there, some Andre Crouch gospel in there. The last guy, this guy Charlie Wilson, somebody asked me to play that. He never commented on it, of course, after I played it. I found that a little bit different for me. It's kind of a newer song. So I kind of went the genre of soul and R&B this month, in the month of February. So that was a lot of fun. But I didn't make a big theme of it. Like last year I tried, and I didn't really get the response I thought. I don't know what response I'm looking for anymore, to be honest, guys. Right now, I've got a crew of people I want to thank that watch my videos every day, comment on my videos every day. It seems like my videos get in the stream a little more for some reason. I don't know if that has to do with putting thumbnails on them, because I've been putting thumbnails on since December, or if it has to do with the fact I've got a couple videos that are really hitting hard every month and over 1,000 views per month that are heavy-duty videos. I don't know. If I look at my analytics, I am moving quicker than last year to getting closer to 9,000 subs, whatever that means, which means 10,000 subs is somewhere in there too. I just want to thank you all for watching. That's all I care about. I do this for fun. I do this for the fun of drumming and the love of drumming. So those of you that watch me know that this is what I do on my weekends. My wife knows I do this on my weekends, and I work it in between life. With that being said, you are going to probably see more of my alt takes in the next couple months, because I'm doing some traveling for business. Occasionally, I'm going to be doing some more family things, like this afternoon. We got my kids are coming over, my grandkids are coming over, so that's going to be a hang afternoon. So less output on weekends. I've got more stuff going on, which is good. That's a good thing for Earl. So, and I'm playing at church and other things. So with all that said, I'm really super busy at work. My company is growing. Lots of stuff going on there. None of that is important to this community and what I do. And you all came here to watch me talk about drums and Ask Earl Anything. That was my slight Jeff Beccaro, that thing that he does in his video. All right. With that being said, I thanked everybody. Metal March 2024. R&B month, February. More alt takes. This is my channel update. Maybe less video output. Thank you all for doing what you do. A couple things that I started last year that I want to try to continue. I hope that some of you will continue to send me videos of your drum rooms or when they change. This month, I'm going to feature a video by 805 Breeze, because 805 Breeze John got a new drum kit and he wanted to share it with us. So I'm going to share his video of his drum room. Take it away, John.
Hey Earl, John from the Jersey Shore checking in. Hope all is well. This is the set I was telling you about last week, the one from Marketplace. I'm pretty glad I got this because it came with everything you see here, with the cymbals, drums, stands, pedals, everything. The only thing it didn't come with was this 9x13 tom, and I picked that up used from the guys at Drum Center of Portsmouth. And those guys are really good guys over there. And but it did come with the 10-inch tom, 12-inch, 14 and 16, and also 22-inch bass drum and 6.5 by 14 steel snare drum. So like I said, I got all the cymbals and everything too, and these are really good Zildjian cymbals. And I'm just waiting for the mount to set up this 7x10 tom on the cymbal stand. I paid $1,800 for this whole set with everything complete, so I was pretty happy with that, considering that Sweetwater wants over $2,000 for just a 4-piece shell pack, and brand new these cymbals will probably go for $1,800 alone. So like I said, I was pretty happy with that. And that's it. Just thought I'd show you this because when you were here last time, you were playing the Ludwig vintage Ludwig set, and I kind of regret selling them. But I'm not going to sell any more drums. I'm going to keep what I have. And I got my Yamaha Stage Customs back there, which are really good drums. And I also have this Gretsch Renown set over here, which is great. And if I do anything with the band, I'll be using this silver oyster pearl and stuff. So thanks for watching, and take care. Thanks again for doing what you do.
Welcome back to Ask Earl Anything. That was John's drum room. That's a beautiful little Gretsch kit he got, another Gretsch Renown kit. So he's got two of them now, two Gretsch Renown. Now I will say this, John, when you move up into the USA Customs or the old vintage Gretsch drums, it's a slightly different shell, but those are great shells on the Renown kits. And that's a nice kit you got there with some great Zildjian cymbals included too. So, all right, let's get started. So the first question, and I've got a bunch of questions, and I got some really nice questions too. First question comes from Dave Pounds 8924. He says, I enjoy your videos, especially Ask Earl Anything videos. I'm a terrible gearhead. I love talking about gear. So here's the question. How do you enjoy listening to music? Do you play vinyl records, CDs, or do you listen to music on streaming platforms? Just curious. Okay, Dave, here's my answer to that great question. I listen in all three formats. I don't listen as much in CDs today because, to be honest, I have a lot of CDs and I used to listen all the time in CDs. But I don't have a CD player hooked up anywhere except in my car. And I don't listen to a lot of CDs in my car because I found that streaming is just easier to deal with in the car. So I have gotten seriously into listening to most of my music by Spotify on streaming. Now, I have an old record collection that I've got some dings and pops and all that stuff that go with records. It's set up in my office, and I've got some studio monitors, Alesis studio monitors in there, and an amplifier and a turntable. And every once in a while, I throw a record on there, like an old Steely Dan or Tower of Power record, or I was listening to Jeff Lorber Fusion recently. That's what's on the turntable. But I don't listen to the records as often. Again, most of my record collection's pretty beat up from my days of practicing with records. I bought most of my records in college, to be honest. I've acquired some records since the record boom started about, 10 years ago, with my kids giving them to me at Christmas or somebody giving me a record at Christmas time. So I've gotten a few records that way. Most of them are used condition. I would have a hard time spending $40 for a record based on the setup I have. I mean, if I had a Macintosh, or whatever they call it, receiver and some great turntable and these great, $6,000 speakers or something, in a nice listening room like that, I would probably have a great record collection. But it's hard to buy albums that you used to have as a kid you bought for $8 now for $40, $50. It's just hard to do that for me. I don't know if you guys realize this, but I'm a pretty frugal guy. I'm a content guy. I don't need a lot of stuff. And the most interesting thing about streaming is I can listen to every record I ever wanted to listen to, and maybe only heard at a friend's house, or only heard in college with a friend listening in their apartment or something. Or maybe it was something I heard about and I always wanted to listen to. Now I can find that album on streaming. I can download it to my phone, and when I'm on planes, a lot of times I'll listen to like great jazz albums I haven't heard in ever. Matter of fact, I just found an album by one of the guys here in the drum community. His name is Gunther. He goes by Drumico. He's from Germany, and he played a Steve Porcaro song called Ready or Not. And I liked the sound of the song and what he was doing on it, so I wanted to hear what the original part was. I found out that the original drummer was Shannon Forrest. Now, Shannon Forrest is a longtime Toto drummer. He's out there with Toto right now. He's probably the guy that sounds closest to Jeff Porcaro because he studied Jeff Porcaro. He's one of those guys that has really studied the masters, and when you hear him play with Toto, he reminds me of Jeff more than any other drummer that's ever played there. I mean, Spuds, Robert Seawright, playing with Toto sounds like Robert Seawright playing with Toto. Simon Phillips playing with Toto sounds like Simon Phillips. Greg Bissonette playing with Toto sounds like Greg Bissonette. But when I listen to Shannon Forrest, I hear Jeff. So Shannon really imbibes the Jeff vibe. So he was invited to play on the Steve Porcaro album, and the song Ready or Not's in like 7, I think it's 7/8. 7/8 or 7/4, I'm not sure which, to be honest. I just remember it was in 7, the count. Anyhow, a lot of fun doing it. I'm going to release that cover this month sometime. But I heard that, and as soon as I heard Gunther play it, I said, you know what? Let's go find it on Spotify. And then I found out there's a whole album of music. And they all sound like Toto songs or Chicago songs or pop hits from the 80s, because Steve Porcaro really writes in that style. So it's a great album that no one's ever going to hear because it's never going to get airplay anywhere. Matter of fact, I think I was even able to share revenue with him because it's not even being followed by anybody. You know, every once in a while you publish something to YouTube and it says off. You know, there's no copyright, but then it says to you, oh, do you want to share? And I share those. Whenever I get asked if I want to share, I share it. Because I'll share the ad revenue with somebody. If somebody wants to give me part of it, that's cool. You know, and a lot of times when you play somebody else's song on YouTube, what are you getting? Nothing. They play whatever they want and they make all the money. So the bottom line of this whole thing is I found Spotify. I was a late adopter to Spotify. My kids were telling me to do this 5 years, 6 years before it started. Before I started doing it in 2015 when I got in the band The Swigs and I had learned 80 songs and I realized I'm not spending $80 on Apple downloads. That's just not going to happen because that's what I was doing at that point in time, downloading and paying for songs for a long time because I thought I was helping the artist. You know what I found out? Streaming and Apple is about the same amount of money for the artist, so what does it matter? Artists are not making that much money off of streaming. They're not making any money off of Apple, iTunes, or anything you got to buy. And then it's like you don't keep it forever anyhow. It's hard to keep forever. So the digital world that's a whole nother discussion. Matter of fact, I think we're going to have a discussion about some of the digital world in one of the questions. That being said, I'd say my most practical place I listen to music is through Spotify and on streaming. But I have CDs, you know, and a lot of my listening happens right at my studio monitors, you know, right on my computer, and turning them on in here and listening to music in this room, more than in an environment where I'm sitting there on a couch listening to speakers. So most of my heavy detailed listening is right in the studio behind the camera. You can't see it. Anyhow, thanks for that great question, Dave. Appreciate it. Okay, we're back, and hopefully the camera will stay on this time. I just shot the whole Ask Earl Anything show. It was the jam. And I got 22 minutes in and the camera said, I don't think I want to watch you anymore. And it stopped. Have no reasoning why. I cannot figure out. It wasn't a space issue. Usually it's space, but I cleared space before I started. Bottom line is, if this feels rushed, it's probably because I'm going through it the second time. You're not getting the same amount of what I do when I go through the questions. But we are on question number 2. We are starting over again, and I'm going to try to give you the same great show I had just done that is now in the space and vibe of this room. So I did get the front end, and I'm glad I got the front end because the front end was very good. It took me a while to get into the show today. This is that kind of a day. Technology is a load of fun. That's all I can tell you. And one thing I've learned with technology is that when things don't work, I had this on Friday at work. I had files that were all not syncing into my OneDrive, and I had to call IT, and they spent an hour and a half trying to find the problem, which was one of the shared folders with somebody else that caused my problem. All that to say is, you just got to roll with it. So here goes take 2. So enjoy. Here comes question number 2 from my friend Jimbo17100. He said, do you read music notation? How did you learn to do it? Thanks, Jim. So the bottom line is to this question is, yes, I know how to read music. How well I read music, that's a whole nother ballgame. When it comes to reading music, it's practice makes perfect. The more you read, the better you get at it. The more you continue to work with the music, the more you will continue to get better at reading the music. I do not have to read music to do what I do here. To be honest, when I make drum covers, I do not read music 99% of the time. Every once in a while, I find a song where it's like, what are they doing? If I had the drum chart, it would make my life easier. I go try to find it. I even joined some Facebook group that supposedly has drum transcriptions. I haven't seen one yet, and I haven't dug too deep into the group. One of the things with me and Facebook is I don't spend a lot of time on Facebook, to be honest. But every once in a while, you want the chart to kind of see what they did and to figure it out. And if you can read, you can work through it. I did that on a song called Cult of Personality. It had some odd bar stuff, and I found it easier to read the chart and go, oh, that's how he does it. It's 3-4 bars. Once I saw it, I knew it. Some of the old Motown stuff, the Jackson 5, was all written out, and it was odd bar stuff. First time I did a Jackson 5 song, I did it with a chart. It worked. That's the only 2 songs on my whole catalog of 1,500 videos that I can think of where I was using a chart, where I was reading a transcription of what the drummer played on the record. So I don't do this very often. Now, I do have videos of me reading charts, but it's big band music. Now, big band charts are a different type of reading than reading transcriptions. But to read notation takes going back to reading from books like the Podemsky book, which is basically, I started on the Podemsky book in college because my reading was so terrible. I somehow got into college by the fact that the teacher who was the head of the drum percussion department, Nick Serrato, saw something in me and said, I'm going to bring this guy in, but he's going to have to work his butt off to get through school here. So he told me during my audition, I was reading something from the NARD book, which is the National Association of Rudimental Drummers. Ludwig put out this green book called the NARD book, and I picked one of the solos in there to play as my audition. And I got through it, I played it down, and Nick Serrato said to me, he goes, so did you memorize that, or are you reading it? And I said, well, yeah, I memorized. He goes, well, you memorized it wrong. Imagine being in an audition and being said, yeah, you're playing it wrong. You're playing 1 EN, 2 EN, it's 1 and a 2 and a. So, and I'm doing backwards. Reading means understanding where the notes are and what the right notes to play. I had problems with that. So I had to work the whole summer on my reading, and when I came to school, I still wasn't reading very well. So he put me in the Podemsky book. In the Podemsky book, I started on quarter notes, half notes, and whole notes with a metronome, reading it. Everybody else was in the Anthony Cerrone book, Portraits in Rhythm, which I eventually got into my second semester. Kicked my butt, by the way, second semester. If I hadn't gotten through Podemsky where I needed to get to Cerrone, I wouldn't have been in the school at that point. So I learned how to read by having to learn how to read, but I'm not a very good reader. And all that to say is, you learn to read because you have to learn to read. I wanted to go to college, I had to learn to read. I started to learn to read when I was a kid, but it never took. And once I started playing drum set, I realized I didn't know how to read. I didn't need to know how to read to play grooves because I heard it and I picked up all by ear. So even when I started reading books like The Realistic Rock or the Jim Chapin book, Advanced Technique for the Modern Drummer, I kind of learned the patterns, and then, the reading, I was like learning it, but it wasn't like I wasn't reading it fluently. I was reading it like chopped up. So to read fluently means you got to read a lot. I learned how to read in college. I'm okay with it now. I'm better with a chart like a big band chart and kind of reading figures and listening. So it's half in ear, half in reading. And if I have to figure something out, I can go to a chart and work the part out. But if you saw any of the little funk drumming workbook exercises I put out, a couple weeks in the month of January, I put some funk drumming workbook exercises out. One of them, number 30, which has got a lot of views, I was playing wrong. And it was a complicated little pattern, but I was playing the note a little wrong. It was like a 16th note off where I was putting the accent. All that to say is my reading still needs work. But can I read? Yes, I can. Do I do drum transcriptions of my videos? No. Do I read drum tab? Nope. I don't read drum tab, and when guys send me stuff that's tabbed out, I don't even get it. I'd much rather read written notes or charts. Charts that give me a broader picture for interpretation. But I wish I was a great reader, but I don't have time to become a great reader. And every once in a while, I do practice today, believe it or not. I have a little practice pad over by my desk, and there's a music stand, and I've got this this book on there, sight reading for drums, and it's basically snare drum stuff. And I'll read it 3, 4, 6, 8, all different odd times, and I'll sit there and practice it, and I'll practice some rudiments. And another book I like to read is Syncopation, which is a good starting book for anybody. And you can do a lot with that book. And practicing out of that book really helped me a lot to learning how to play figures and stuff on the kit. And there's a lot of things you can do with it. So all that said is, do you need to read? Yes, you need to read. Can I read? Yes, I can. Do I write charts out to do my drum covers? No, I play them almost exclusively by ear. But yeah, Jimbo, learn to read if you can, because the more you can read, the better off you're going to be. But it's a balance of ear and reading. You got to have both to really make it as a professional musician. No, even the pros, a lot of it is understanding where the music is and their ear hearing the way things are going. So get into theory, go into deeper than just reading drum notes. Learn how to read piano, learn how to read chord charts. Understand chord progressions. All these things help me in when I'm playing drums with anybody and learning songs. A lot of times, one of the hardest things of learning modern music for me is that the chord progressions don't change. A lot of the worship music in churches, the modern worship, it's the same 2, 6, 4, 5 progression all the time. 1, 2, 6, 4, 5, 1, 2, 6, 4, 5, 1. Those, and the progression may be 2, 6, 2, 6. Then all of a sudden it goes in the chorus. It's still 2, 6, 4, 2, 6. They have the 4 chord. And unless you've got the melodic instruments and somebody strong playing those other parts that are on the record, a lot of times I get lost and they say, well, why aren't you counting? I don't count. I listen harmonically to what's going on in a song and I follow the song. Older music where there's more chords and you can hear the progression of the music melodically and chordally, I actually play off of that. I kind of know where the phrases go because you hear the 8-bar phrases, the 12-bar phrases, the 16-bar phrases. You start to hear it in the progressions. So my ear has a lot more to do with me learning music fast than reading it. But there are guys that only play these songs by reading all the music. That's all they do is read it. Now, how well they read it's a whole nother ballgame, because one of the things you don't get in written music is you don't get the feel and the swing of the drummer. And by listening to the music, and a lot of times I'll record my covers with the other drummer on, I actually try to get the vibe of the other drummer. I'm trying to feel the way he's playing the hi-hat, the way he's playing the snare drum, where the fills go and how the fills go, and play in the fill style. I don't always get the fill exact, but I'll play in the style of the drummer, what he's playing. That is kind of where I go with listening to music. So it's really important. Anyhow, Jimbo, thanks for the question. Great question. All right, my next question comes from Nmixing. He said, this is on Smoke on the Water, Deep Purple. He said, nice work. How did you get your hi-hat to sound so good? What mic is picking it up? So I think this guy's a recording engineer, by the way. One of the things that I do when I mic a drum kit is, and for the most part, I only use one snare mic. Some guys use two. Some guys use a hi-hat mic. I rarely use a hi-hat mic. So most of my recordings are done with tom mics, two overheads, kick and snare. That's it. No hi-hat mic. So how did I mic the hi-hat for this? I find that the hi-hat comes from two things. Number one, most of my hi-hat is coming from my snare drum mic, even though some of it is bleeding into the overheads. Most of my overhead mixing for a drum cover, I pull the overheads back much further than the kick and the snare. The kick and the snare are pushed up. So my overheads are back, so my cymbals are not way out there, way in front in the mix. The second part is how I play the instrument. And that's something that's very hard to teach somebody. That again goes to listening to how you fit into the mix. So let's talk about Smoke on the Water. When I played Smoke on the Water as a child, I probably played it with the hi-hat, the snare, and the kick all being about the same volume level. This is how most people play all their grooves. They play their grooves like this. So Smoke on the Water sounds like this. But when I played that cover, mine probably sounded more like this. And this is called playing to the microphones, where I play the hi-hat decidedly lower so I don't bleed into the microphones. And where did I learn this? I learned this technique on the first album I played on in Nashville. I came into the studio that day. I had a set of 14-inch Rude hi-hats. The engineer saw the Rude hi-hats and said, "Get rid of those things. Do you have anything else?" I said, "Well, I got a pair of new beats." He goes, "Put those up." Now, even though the new beats were heavier bottom, heavier top than the Rudes, just seeing Rude on a cymbal was enough for this engineer to go, "You're going to play them too loud." And then he heard me play it, and I was sounding like I just played. The cymbals, the snare, and the kick were all the same volume. So I'm talking to the engineer, and the engineer said, "Can you try this? Try to play your hi-hat as quiet as possible and play your kick and snare as loud as possible." So I started with something like this. By playing the hi-hat quieter, kick and snare louder, it's a balance into the microphones. And the hi-hat is not bleeding through everything. So when drummers don't self-balance themselves out, that's when you have problems with miking. So engineers go, "I'll just mic everything. I'll put a mic on the ride cymbal, put a mic on the hi-hat. I want to pull it out." Now, some guys today that do home recording, these major guys, I'm talking about pro guys. A lot of the pro guys will have mics on everything, and they'll give you like 20 tracks of drums. Room mics and a hi-hat mic and a cymbal mic. And they'll give you options anxiety in what you're listening to. The truth of the matter is, when I record, I have a little kick, a little snare in my headphones, really no toms in there. Everything's coming through the overheads, are super loud. But when I mix it for YouTube, overheads are way back. The other things are pulled out to get the punch. So my tom mics are used to get the punch out of the toms. Kick and snare are right there. They're pushed up to get the sound out of that heavy kick and snare. Hi-hat's way, way back. But when I record, that's loud. Why is that loud? So I balance myself when I'm doing the song, hearing myself through those overheads in my headphones. Now, they're not so loud where the drums are louder than the other instruments. I try to balance myself and mix myself into the music. This is where having a good monitoring system becomes important for doing a drum cover, so I can actually fit in the music and sit in it. So when I did Smoke on the Water, my hi-hat snare drum part sounded probably something more like this. 1, 2. hi-hat played softer. So, yes, there's some EQ things I do in the snare mic that makes the hi-hat come out a little bit or pulls it back a little bit depending on the mix of the hat and the snare. There's something I do in the overhead magic, but in actuality, it's how I play in the room, and I balance myself in the track that is my sound. By the way, all the great drummers know this trick, and they do that. And in the old days, that's pretty much how it was done. You played in the room together, you're getting a sound and a vibe, and you balance yourself out. So a lot of younger guys play bash. That's why everybody plays this beat. Right? Very straight there. But in actuality, make it groove and sound like something mixed in a track. Another part of the trick that I'm learning, and it's taken me years to figure this out, is to get the best snare drum sound, play in the center of the drum, tip of the stick. That's taken me years to figure that out, because I was a guy who liked to do this, back of the stick, and hit the rim shots. Now, I do hit rim shots once in a while, but center of the drum has a better sound recording-wise than smacking rim shots. Just something I've learned. Thanks for the question. Really do appreciate the question. Nmixing. Next question comes from the tired drummer. It says, good day, Earl. I see the kit is in the other studio in this video. This was still caught up in you last night in the Pips. And he's talking about I had a bunch of videos on this kit in this room, and now he's seeing it in the other room like it used to be. That video was done in December. That's the answer to this question. Just wondering if this was shot before you switched up rooms. The answer is yes. Thank you, Ken, for noticing. I've been trying to change rooms just for sound and vibe and inspiration reasons. Sometimes you just change rooms just to get a different vibe. I put the Gretsch kit in that room, and for a couple weeks there, I was playing the Gretsch kit every weekend. When I was doing those soul tunes, it was just so much fun playing that kit. But then I have times when I want to play this kit. This past week and last weekend, I started playing this kit a little more. Did some covers. I did a Pink Floyd cover. Bunch of cool things. So different kits, different rooms give different vibes. Different vibes give me different inspiration. And that's what I'm going for, Ken. I'm looking for inspiration. I have the drums. Now, I was talking to my friend Jim, I'm going to say Huey, but I know there's a way he says it. Jim, I butcher your name every time I say it. But you know what I'm talking about. We talked the other day. And we were talking about the room thing. If I had to change my kit around all the time and switch the drums out, I probably wouldn't be switching it very often. The fact I have two rooms with two full drum setups allows me to basically go, I can do different things. It doesn't take much to move a tom or that, but if I had to move mics or I had to do complete change outs of kick drums and things like that, it takes a lot of time. Watch some of those time-lapse videos of my friend Jim Waggy. Jim Waggy likes to switch drum kits. He's got a bunch of them. You should watch him switch the drum videos. He does like a time-lapse video of him vacuuming the floor. And every time I set up, change kits, or move the kit seriously around, re-mic everything, it's vacuuming, it's cleaning up all the drum stick crap on the floor. It's a load of fun. That room hadn't been cleaned in a long time, so I had to do that. I took that whole room apart. It took me 2 hours to move the two kits that day. But it was worth it. It got me some inspiration. So I'm in this for now, but this will change again. Just saying. My next video comes from the tired drummer twice. Ken's second question is, I have a question for you. What is the iPad or tablet to the left for? So he's talking about this iPad. By the way, this is a very old iPad. I got this in 2012. I was working at a church doing a lot of work at the church. I think Logic just went away again. I was doing a lot of work for a church. I wasn't charging them anything. A good friend of mine was the worship leader, and it was around Christmas time I came in to do it, and as a Christmas present, because they hadn't been paying me for weeks, I did like 3 months solid of playing drums every Sunday. I came in and they said, hey, we want you to have this. And this was my first iPad. So I use this iPad exclusively for everything. It's 16 gigabytes. I used this iPad until 2018, 2017. Christmas of 2017, I got a new iPad. So that's the same iPad I use for everything now, except that's got 128 gigabytes on it, so I never run out of space on that. But I ran out of space on this pretty quick. I use this for a transport. Now, what's a transport? Transport is the device that engineers used to have that made the tape machine go fast forward or backwards or push play and record just to record it, enable tracks to record. And this is a transport from a company called LP Touch that I use, Delora software. And this works with Logic. Very, very cool. And it connects to Logic and it works fine. Now, Logic has its own transport, by the way. The problem with the Logic transport, I'm going to tell you, is that now that this is an older iPad, a real old iPad, it won't go any further iOS. So I cannot get the other app on here, so it won't work. I could put the other app on my other devices, but not on this. And the other problem is my operating system on my computer is 3 or 4 back from where it should be, that it doesn't work with the new app anyhow. So I'm glad I still have this app, which works with my operating system, and it does everything I need it to do. I don't need it to do all craziness. All I need it for is faders and start and stop. That's all I use this for. So this is the start and stop. All the other stuff all the other stuff that goes with the transport, I do on the computer on the mixing board in Logic. It makes it a lot easier than having to get up and go to the computer and turn things on. Now I have to turn all the cameras on, but remember, I'm recording through the recording studio software, the DAW, which means I take the final mix and I sync it to my cameras. So my final mix is done in Logic. I bounce it out, WAV file, bring it into Final Cut, bring my camera files into Final Cut, then I line them and sync them in Final Cut and create my videos. Transport starts it all. This allows me to sit here and go, do it again. Then I gaff, and stop, click, restart. And I start the tune again. Works great. Thanks for the question, Ken. Really do appreciate it. My next question comes from my good friend Gilbert, Mondo Spark, Gilbert. Gilbert's been a friend for a long time. This is on the Earth, Wind and Fire song, Sing a Song. And it was done in the other room, on the other kit, the Gretsch kit. And that day I happened to have 3 floor toms. And he asked the question, how's the floor tom working out? Now the floor tom's where I just put it right over here. This is my 16 by 18 floor tom. Or for those of you in Europe, it's 18 by 16 floor tom. I don't know if you realize, but I give tom sizes and American sizes the way I knew them from American catalogs. In Europe, they do the sizes backwards. It's the 18 by 16 floor tom instead of 16 by 18. We do the diameter of the shell, the shell depth by the diameter. And in Europe, they do the diameter of the shell, the head size, by the shell depth, 18 by 16. This is a 16 by 18 floor tom to me. So in there, I have a 14 by 14 and a 16 by 16. So it doesn't really matter how you say that, right? But when you get to this 16 by 18 floor tom, that's the 3rd floor tom. So I was using 3 floor toms on the video, and he was asking me how it was working out with 3 floor toms. 3 floor toms is like playing this big kit. It's just adding another drum out here somewhere, which I could reach over to because I'm used to reaching this way. I like playing big kits. Now, that style of floor tom setup with 14, 16, 18 is the Tony Williams style. Tony Williams is the famous jazz drummer. He played Gretsch drums. Somewhere in the 1970s, Tony Williams switched to his yellow Gretsch kit with a 24-inch bass drum, a 9x13, 10x14 tom, 14x14 floor tom, 16x16 floor tom off to the side over here, and a 16x18 floor tom. 6.5x14 Gretsch snare drum. And that was his setup that he used until he became a DW endorser when he had a DW kit made. Similar sizes and similar color with these really ugly red hoops on it. But that's another story for another time. Anyhow, that was my inspiration. I finally have 3 floor toms. I finally have a 14, 16, 18. It made sense to try it once. Fiberglass doesn't really fit with the Gretsch, but they kind of sounded cool together because this is huge, this thing. This thing's a monster, this floor tom. So I had fun. I think that's all you were asking me. I made it an Ask Earl Anything question just for you, Gilbert, so to add you to the show. I missed your questions. Thanks for watching. All right. My next question comes from my friend Mike Fasano. Mike Fasano, the 7th and 9th drummer of the band Warrant. He used to tour with Warrant. Did some Warrant songs, the hair band. He now plays in the band Tiger Army. I happened to see Tiger Army a few years back in Fort Lauderdale. Mike became friends with me because of Ask Earl Anything. He's one of the guys that caught me early on touching things and scratching my face and other places that I won't go into. And he called me out on the comments, and I kind of cracked up. Those of you that know me, like Jeff Metz, you guys know me as a guy that when you call me out or you say something, you're not really offending me, because I know I kind of catch that you're just basically goofing with me. I'm a goofball. Like, if I'm with friends with you, we talk on the phone, I'm the kind of guy that will cut up on each other. We'll have fun with it. My hardest time is dealing with criticism from people who don't have any content to look at to see what kind of a drummer they are. So it's hard for me to respect guys that don't really have anything that I can see. So when they're telling me, "Hey, you're late," that's all they say. You're late on this song, or you're not in the pocket with this. Like, where am I not in pocket? Because I wouldn't put something out if I didn't feel I was in the pocket. I'm not saying every note's in the pocket. There could be a little bit of this and that going on. I just did a song last weekend, a Traffic song. Well, the band was all over the place, by the way. We're talking about Traffic. I forget the name of the song I picked. It's one of their famous ones. Anyhow, long and the short of it, Jim Capaldi was probably the drummer on this session. I don't believe it was Roger Hawkins, just because the way the tempo moved. And after playing it, I felt like, wow, I've really divided the middle to find it. And I was in it at the end, but there was one section I was kind of feeling like, oh, I'm not sure, but I listened to it. I said, that's good enough. It's going to have to work. So if somebody called me out and said, that section between 4 minutes and 49 and 5:20, it seemed a little rough, I'll say, maybe it was a little rough. Yeah, but you got that far? Thank you for listening that far. Most of you only listen for the first 21 seconds of a song. Some of you listen for a minute. I think the average is like 1:21 on my videos. So if I got a 5-minute video and I got some of you listen to the whole thing, like I do have guys that listen to the whole thing. They know my endings. They love the ending part of the songs. That's usually where I kick it in a little bit. Those guys are making up for all the guys who pop in for 20 seconds and go, I've had enough of this. They click out. That's how we watch music today, by the way. We listen for 20 seconds and we're done. What do we know in the first 20 seconds of anything? Not much. But maybe they know something. Maybe they know I'm not the drummer they want to listen to. That's a possibility, right? Well, anyhow, Mike Fasano liked my long-form Ask Earl Anythings, and he asked me a question. I'm going to read his comment. Now, Mike and I talk on the phone. Mike is a drum tech to the stars, by the way. Mike Fasano is drum tech for Mick Fleetwood. Matt's used to room with Matt Sorum, and he's tech for him. He worked with Trey Cool and Green Day Records, early Green Day Records. He's worked with a lot of guys in the studio. He's got a ton of gear. He's got a ton of knowledge, and he enjoys listening to guys like me ramble about our knowledge of drums. So when we get on the phone, we talk about drums for hours and talk about drummers for hours. Very fun guy to talk to. So I'm going to jump right to let me read it. He was supposed to send me a video. Now, if the video shows up before this gets edited, and the fact that now I'm doing this for the second time, maybe it'll show up this morning. I may just send him another note before I go and say, hey, just send me that question. And hopefully it's about drum beaters, bass drum beaters, because that's where this goes, by the way. But if he doesn't, I got this. We talked after my last Earl Anything show, so here's what Mike had to say. My good friend Mike Fasano. We talk quite often through the year.
Hey, Earl. It's your friend in real life and longtime Ask Earl Anything subscriber, Mike Fasano from Los Angeles. I have a question about your bass drum at your studio. Always sounds amazing. Are you using the same beater, or do you switch it up to a felt beater, a hard felt beater, a square felt beater, a hard plastic beater, a square plastic beater, or a super puffy beater? What do you prefer? Why does your bass drum sound so great? All right, thanks. See ya.
So I forgot to talk about beaters. When I talked about the fat bass drum sound I've been getting, I talked a little bit about something I read in an article by Ed Green. By the way, that article was August-September 1980, the one with the Doobie Brothers on it. Ed Green tuned his bass drum batter head up higher than lower. A lot of guys, the natural thing is to tune your heads down to get the fat sound. But in actuality, with the bass drum, having it tuned up, you've got bass drum pedal response gets better. It's kind of like a snare drum. If your snare drum is too floppy, your bounce on the snare drum doesn't work. So I try to keep my snare drum batters medium, but if I go for that really loose thing, you get a sloppier kind of snare roll. You're not getting a crisp one. If you tune it up tight, like you get in marching snare drums today, are super tight, Kevlar heads, cranked. That's why those sticks bounce the way they do, and you can do those rudiments off of them. So you got to have, to get the bass drum doubles and stuff, you got to have the bass drum a little tighter. It helps. So tightening the bass drum has helped me to get my fat sound. I can still get the fat sound, but it's a tighter bass drum head. Well, the other thing that helps with the sound is the beater, obviously. And I'm a guy who likes beaters. I got lots of beaters. I like beaters. Now, my favorite beater for the studio is a square head beater. By the way, my first square beater was a felt beater by ProMark that I wish I still had. I can't find it anywhere. So I bought a Danmar Zorro beater, flathead. I use that on my bass drum. The key with the bass drum head, though, is the beater has to be, if it's square, it has to hit straight. If it's hitting in like this, you're not getting the sound. That's the sound you're going for. So if you want that sound, you got to make sure your pedal's set up so you're hitting the bass drum flat. When you do that, you get a big, fat sound. So, big, fat sound, hitting the bass drum head. So, I use a square beater. Matter of fact, my beater in there is kind of like this Ludwig, but it's a Danmar. And I actually shaved it so it's flat. This is not shaved, this is worn. Because the way this beater hit was hitting like that when I used this for years. This came off of a, look at that beater bend. That shaft bend is just incredible. And what ended up happening was it hitting like that, and over the years it rubbed. This was on a Speed King. Vic Firth a few years ago wanted to give you that flat beater thing without giving you a square, so they gave you this beater. And this beater you can use this way to kind of hit into it, or you can hit it flat. By the way, this beater crapped on me one day, and that's why I don't use it anymore. I need to re-glue it. But it came off. It almost broke my bass drum because the shaft almost went through it. That's a problem. This is the Peter Erskine one, the VKB5. Cool beater. Believe it or not, it just doesn't feel cool to me. And for some reason, I stopped using it. I don't think this came off, though. Anyhow, it's a different vibe. One of my favorite beaters is the one I use on my travel pedal. This is my Camco Tama pedal. By the way, I've got a regular Camco pedal, like the Floating Action or the Martin Fleet. What do they call it? It's not called Fleetwood, it's Fleet something. Anyhow, that pedal has, I actually have a Camco pedal I'm going to put a new sprocket on. It's not this sprocket, it's a DW sprocket. I'm trying to soup it up. Unfortunately, I got sidetracked with that project. That hasn't happened yet, but someday I'll film that and do that. But this beater is the Rogers beater. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the Rogers Dynasonica. This is the Dynomatic beater, but it comes from the version called the Dynasonic beater back in the 70s. And basically, it's a spring-loaded, and you can flip it. Just push down on it. It's very cool on gigs. Sometimes I'll go for the big hard side plastic, and sometimes I flip it over to the felt side. Great beater. They're like 18, 20 bucks. Bought one of those a few years ago. But there's all types of beaters I have. This is another, I forget who made this one. I think Slug made this one. Sluggo or something. Rubber, felt. This is a pearl beater. Felt, hard rubber. They don't have the weight. The other part of this square beater is it's got a certain weight to it I like. This is your classic wood beater. I also got a red one somewhere. I don't know where that ended up. I might have gave that away. I have two of these wood ones. By the way, this one's got another bend. These shafts, the great shafts are the ones that don't bend. The Danmar's got a non-bendable shaft. I love that one. This is my square wood one. The problem with the wood one is it'll go through heads if it doesn't have a proper moleskin or beater patch. So I always have a good beater patch. By the way, this drum has no beater patch. So this will not go on there. That's why I got the felt on there. Felt doesn't go through it. I love this one. This is a lamb's wool beater. It's nice for feathering the bass drum on jazz gigs, but you don't want to use it too much if you play a lot of funk and rock. This will wreck the head of this. It'll wear out. Matter of fact, I've gotten close to on a couple spots. Really close to not really doing what it wants. But it's kind of light. How boomy that sounds versus this one. Wood. Or plastic. Different sound. That's the sticks. Anyhow, lots of beaters. Different beaters make the sound too. So having the right beaters. My preference is a square felt beater, but I'll be honest, I don't always use that. My left foot pedal is a Danmark round. That's the Zorro. I do have a double pedal. Will I ever play it? Stay tuned. Might come soon. All right. And thank you, Mike, for that question. My last question comes from my friend Ken Burton. Ken's a longtime friend. Matter of fact, he's the guy who told me I should do drum covers about in 2010. I wish I started then. I might have 1 million subscribers by now. Maybe I could quit my day gig. Probably not happening with drum covers, by the way. And the question from Ken is, not my favorite genre. This was on the song Turn the Beat Around, Vicky Sue Robinson. But great job on covering this. Love the offbeat 16th notes on the hi-hat. On another note, have you ever addressed in your videos click versus flow? Everyone says disco would be right on rhythm, but this song varies by probably 3 or 4 BPM at least. I wouldn't say the click is destroying the music, but it certainly is undermining it. I was taught in music theory that music consists of timbre, pitch, tempo, and dynamics. Modern music pretty much eliminates 2 of the 3. You wanted my thoughts on it. Okay, Ken, here we go. Take 2 on this. First off, let me say this about modern music. Modern music is what it is today. And it has come from a place of our world changing and becoming more technological. Because we're more technological, I didn't go here on the first one, but I'm going to go here on the second one. My wife has got a PhD. One of the philosophers she studied was a guy named Jacques Ellul. Ellul. That's how I say it. I say that to we have a friend that just laughs when I go, Jacques Ellul. It's like Senor Blula, from the Flintstones. But Jacques Ellul was a French philosopher. He wrote a lot of books. One of the books he talked about was I can't remember the name of the book. My wife knows the name of the book. But he talked about this thing called la technique. So I'm giving you a philosophy lesson today, the drummer. La technique has seeped into every form of our life. And la technique is seen in everything today. It's seen in business, it's seen in technology, it's seen in medicine, and it's seen in the music business. See, before Pro Tools, music was made with musicians sitting in a room being human and somebody writing out parts and handing them parts. Let's go back to the 1600s in classical music and getting people that had only so much playing ability all working together and somebody conducting them and reading the music off the sheet. We got to the point with recording where we could go back and fix things so that when we record it, we can listen to it in its best state as possible. So before you were listening to a concert in a hall and the music was made in time and you're listening to it in time and then you went home leaving the place feeling like whatever that music made you feel like. But now we could buy the music, put it on a record, and we can listen to musicians in a room with microphones making music. Now, it's still organic because it's still the musicians making music. But as we started to go from 2-track machines to 8-track to 24-track overdubbing machines, not all the music had to be made at the same time to make it better. So La Technique slipped in and basically started saying, well, we can overdub a better guitar part, and we can have a better vocal, and we can stack the vocals, and we can make the records better. So in the name of progress, we kept progressing. None of this is bad, by the way. This is all just is what it is. Well, when Pro Tools came in, now it was the computer basically telling us, you can record in the computer. And when you record, you can see how you land on the grid. And if you record with a click track, you can see how the beats land on the click on the grid. Now, we were using click tracks before computers. Matter of fact, the first band I ever used a click track with was the band Saved by Grace. We went to Nashville to cut that album, and we had 3 sequence tracks on the album. Keyboard player, Mark Tumanosco, basically programmed them into his computer, okay, which was a Windows computer, a DOS computer. He had a music program. He programmed it into the computer with a sequencer. And he used the sequencer to create all kinds of different keyboard parts, MIDI. This is the use of MIDI in the 80s. And basically, we had to put a click down to lock in with the computer. I was having issues with the click, so they hired John Hammond to come in and play along with the click on those 3 songs because He could just do it really well. Now, when he played to that click, we weren't looking at the grid. We were listening through the mic, the speakers. We could hear the click and we could hear how he's laying. And as long as it sounded like he was right on it or around it, he was in it. And if it didn't feel right, we'd make him go punch in and fix his part. Well, today, after Pro Tools, you don't have to do that anymore. So what's killing music today is not so much the click. The click made it closer and closer to metronomically correct. What's killing it today is that we take this grid and we say the grid is king, and let's move everything to fit on the grid. When I talked to John J.R. Robinson, a few years back, took a couple lessons with him, he told me about working on the Daft Punk record, Lucky. And he's on it, and so is Omar Hakim, are the drummers on it. They're both credited as drummers on it, apparently. He said that he played his parts, Omar played their parts, they used whatever parts they wanted to use, they put it on the grid, and he couldn't tell what he played or what Omar played. He really couldn't tell the difference. He's sure that whatever he played in the session got moved and put on the grid and made to fit the way they wanted it to fit. So this is what's killing music, is that we are now getting to the point, because of la technique, trying to make it perfect, progressing to the point where perfection is the goal, that music is so perfect now, we put it on the grid, everything, all the notes line up, nothing is rushed, nothing is dragging, everything is perfect. We're gridding out the feel. The feel's gone away. So what made a record a cool sounding record back in the 70s and 80s was live musicians playing it with their feel, and the guys in a room all playing with their feel and making it happen. Go watch the Immediate Family movie, by the way, if you want to see what those guys did together and made incredible music together in studios all over the world for all kinds of artists. Or the Wrecking Crew. I mean, all I can tell you is the click is not the problem. It's the grid, and it's the mindset of la technique, which basically says everything's got to be perfect. So now we've actually got artists that are trying to they're trying to program imperfection into the songs. When in actuality, what you need to do is get good musicians in a room, play it, and then not touch it. By the way, when I record for drum covers, even though I beat detective the song that I'm playing to, and I create a click track out of it, there's a name for that in Logic. It's different than beat detective. It's called beat mapping. I beat map the song, so I can see the grid. I don't ever look at the grid to see if I'm on that grid that I created. And by the way, the grid that beat mapping creates is not an even click. It's not on the songs I'm playing, because the songs I'm playing all moved around it. By the way, I did some of John Robinson's songs that were all done with clicks, and he said to me, why isn't it locking on the metronome, like the metronome marking of the song? Why isn't it just locking there? I said, well, because however you played it, it wasn't perfect to the click, and the computer doesn't know anything but perfect, so it locks it perfect. So if it's 82, what the computer's seeing is that's 82.3, and that hits 81.9, and this hits 84.2, and that's how they create a beat map for a song using a real drummer. It kind of creates this beat map that's not perfect to 82, but generally the song is 82. How could that possibly happen? Well, humans in a room playing to a click track, listening to it through speakers, and not looking at a grid, worrying if they're a little ahead, a little behind. But it felt really good. Made great music. Great music is made by musicians playing in a room, and that's what you feel on those disco songs, even if it moves a few beats per minute. It doesn't really matter. It's got a great groove to it. That's all I got to say about it. So, great question, Ken. Thank you for asking it. Don't be disheartened. Just keep playing music with musicians in a room. I think the live experience is something that cannot be overstated as needed. Even though the live experience today is trying to get closer and closer to perfection. That's why we play with clicks in church. That's why we play with clicks on the big stages all around the world. Everything is all synced up on these tours. These drummers play with clicks great. But any great drummer playing with a click knows the click is your friend. It's just another instrument, and you play around it. And you know what? That's why it has that kind of feel live, that in the studio, they just take that feel and say, it's got to be on the grid, and they grid it. They suck it into the grid. I don't know. That's the disheartening part of recording today. But I know how to use the technology. I get it. So anyhow, a lot of food for thought. If you got any comments about this one, throw them in the bottom. Hope you made it to the end to get to this question. If you didn't, you probably missed this one, but this is a good one. Thank you for watching Ask Earl Anything. Your questions make the show. Without your questions, we don't have a show. And I sure hope that camera's still going, because truthfully, I can't do a third show. This is my second show I've done. So thank you all for watching. Have a great day. Please like and subscribe, all that stuff. I got merch. Thanks for watching. Bye.